Welcome to my YouTube channel, Shadow Whispers Another Story. Today's story is Alone in the Dark, 3 Real Horror Stories During Stormy Nights. Introduction. The wind howled like a wounded animal, clawing at the windows as the storm raged outside. Rain lashed against the glass in relentless sheets, and the occasional flash of lightning illuminated the room for a split second, casting long, jagged shadows that danced across the walls. It was one of those nights, the kind where the air feels heavy, and every creak of the house seems to carry a sinister intention. Storms have a way of making the ordinary feel extraordinary, and the familiar feel foreign. They strip away the comfort of modern life, plunging us into darkness and forcing us to confront the unknown. Tonight, we delve into 3 real-life horror stories that unfolded on nights just like this, nights where the line between reality and nightmare blurred, and the darkness became something more than just the absence of light. These are not tales spun from imagination. These are accounts from people who lived through them, who felt the cold grip of fear tighten around their hearts as the storm raged on. So, grab a blanket, turn up the volume, and prepare yourself. Because once the lights go out, there's no telling what might be lurking in the shadows. Story 1. The Knock at the Window. It was a quiet evening, or at least it had been until the storm rolled in. Sarah had always loved the rain. There was something soothing about the rhythmic patter against the roof, the way it made the world feel smaller, safer. But tonight, the storm was different. It was angry, violent, as if it had a score to settle with the earth. She sat in her living room, curled up on the couch with a book in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. The power had gone out an hour ago, leaving her with nothing but the flickering light of a few candles to ward off the darkness. Outside, the wind screamed, and the trees swayed like drunken giants. And then she heard it. A knock. It was soft at first, barely audible over the storm. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. It came again, louder this time, more insistent. Her eyes darted to the window. The curtains were drawn, but she could see the faint outline of the glass, slick with rain. Who could possibly be out there? She thought. Her house was on the 2nd floor, and there was no balcony, no tree close enough to reach the window. She set her book down and stood, her legs trembling as she approached the window. The knock came again, sharper now, almost frantic. Her hand hovered over the curtain, hesitating. What if it was someone in trouble? What if they needed help? But another part of her, a deeper, more primal part, screamed at her to stay away. She pulled the curtain back. The window was empty. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. As she turned to walk away, the knock came again, this time from the other side of the room. She spun around, her breath catching in her throat. The sound was unmistakable now, a rhythmic tapping that seemed to echo in the silence. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for the source. The candles flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. And then she saw it. A hand. It was pressed against the glass, pale and trembling, fingers splayed as if trying to claw its way inside. Sarah stumbled back, her scream trapped in her throat. The hand moved, sliding down the glass with a sickening squeak, leaving a trail of moisture in its wake. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her hands shaking so badly she could barely press the buttons. The operator's voice was calm, reassuring, but it did little to ease the terror that gripped her. "There's someone outside my window," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "Stay where you are," the operator instructed. "Help is on the way." But as Sarah waited, the knocking continued. It moved from window to window, circling the house like a predator stalking its prey. By the time the police arrived, the storm had begun to subside, and the knocking had stopped. They found nothing. No footprints in the mud, no ladder, no sign of forced entry. Just Sarah, pale and shaken, clutching a blanket around her shoulders as she recounted what she had seen. To this day, she swears it wasn't her imagination. And every time a storm rolls in, she makes sure to stay far away from the windows. Mark had always been a practical man. He didn't believe in ghosts or monsters or things that went bump in the night. But that all changed one stormy evening, when the power went out and the darkness became something more than just the absence of light. He was home alone, watching TV when the storm hit. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely, plunging the house into darkness. He sighed, fumbling for the flashlight he kept in the drawer beside the couch. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the familiar surroundings of his living room. He made his way to the fuse box, hoping it was just a tripped breaker. But as he walked down the hallway, something felt off. The air was colder, heavier, as if the storm had somehow seeped inside. He shook off the feeling, chalking it up to his imagination. But then he saw it. At the end of the hallway, just beyond the reach of his flashlight, stood a shadowy figure. It was tall, impossibly so, its form shifting and wavering like smoke. Mark froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hello?" he called out, his voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. It just stood there, motionless, watching him. Mark took a step back, his mind racing. He told himself it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the storm. But deep down, he knew better. He turned and ran, slamming the door to his bedroom behind him. He pressed his ear against the wood, listening for any sign of movement. But the house was silent, save for the sound of the storm outside. When the power came back on hours later, Mark cautiously opened the door. The hallway was empty, the shadow gone. But the feeling of being watched never left him. To this day, he avoids that hallway during storms. And sometimes, when the lights flicker, he swears he can see the shadow out of the corner of his eye, waiting for him in the dark. Story 3, The Voice on the Radio. Emily and Jake were driving home from a weekend getaway when the storm hit. The rain came down in sheets, reducing visibility to almost zero. The wind howled, shaking the car as they crept along the remote forest road. "We should pull over," Emily said, her voice tense. "There's nowhere to stop," Jake replied, gripping the wheel tightly. "We just have to keep going." The radio crackled with static, the signal lost in the storm. Emily reached over to turn it off, but before she could, a voice broke through the noise. It was faint, barely audible, but unmistakable. A whisper, soft and insistent, calling their names. "Emily, Jake." They exchanged a glance, their unease growing. The voice continued, giving them directions. "Turn left at the next fork. Follow the road until they reached a clearing." "This is crazy," Jake said, but something compelled him to follow the instructions. They drove for what felt like hours, the storm raging around them. Finally, they reached the clearing. In the center stood an abandoned house, its windows dark and lifeless. As they approached, a light flickered in one of the windows. The voice on the radio grew louder, more urgent. "Come inside." They never found the source of the voice, but to this day they avoid that road, especially during storms. And sometimes, when the radio crackles with static, they swear they can hear the whisper again, calling their names. Storms have a way of revealing the hidden, the forgotten, the things that lurk just beyond the edge of our perception. These stories remind us that sometimes the scariest things are not the monsters under the bed, but the ones that live in the shadows of our minds. So the next time the lights go out and the storm rolls in, remember, you're never really alone in the dark. Do you have a stormy night story? Share it in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more chilling tales. Stay safe out there, and maybe keep a flashlight handy. Outro music, eerie. Haunting melody fades out as the screen goes black. See you in next story. Thank you for watching.